I'm, I guess I'm hesitating because this is a very sensitive topic for me. But I said I would open up and I would share the story. Now, I've told people who know me know that it's part of my past. I was married previously. I met my first husband when I was 16. I was 16. I had survived a lot. I had gone through some things, and but we were good for the most part in the beginning. And his mouth was disrespectful. He was very disrespectful mouth. So what happened was, it was one night, and I can tell you exactly the moment. We got married when I was 18. And our house was the hangout house. Everybody, all the friends, I would cook for everybody. We'd come over, everybody be drinking, we'd be smoking, we'd be partying. It was a hangout spot. And his mouth was just a mess that night. I can't remember the exact comment, but I know that I did smack him, which I was completely out of line for. And in that quick moment, I was about 102 pounds. He weighed about 283, 284. I'm 4'11". He lifted me up off the ground by my throat. His friends, which I knew before him, intervened. And that was the beginning of violence entering into our lives. And it continually progressed. And I was never one to take it lying down. I was one who always fought back. But regardless of whether or not I fought back, it was still abuse. Anytime, if you're saying, I can't take it anymore, I want out of this relationship, and you're being handcuffed to a bar, or you're getting a gun put to your head, or getting a gun inserted into your vagina, or just any of the countless other things that went on, it is abuse, regardless of how you retaliate or you fight back or whatever. It got to the point where I knew it was getting ready to escalate into violence just by his stance, just by the tone of his voice, and I knew what buttons to push to get it over with. And on our last altercation, I knew it was getting ready to go. I'll never forget, I was curling my hair because I was going out, and I don't, again, remember what he said, but he had me backed into a corner, and all I could think was keep the curling iron on. And he called me out of my name, and I told him, well, I learned it from your mother. And somehow, some way, he ended up, there was a scalpel. I don't know where the scalpel came from because I didn't see it in his hand before. And he cut me. And I left out of the house after I burned him with the curling iron. And I ran to my girlfriend that I was meeting. I was not dressed. I had on pajamas, basically, what I slept in. And I didn't come back into the house until 2 days later. I had an order of protection. Now, I had this order of protection, and I was already done. I was already completely done with the situation. And I walked into the house, and I saw my blood still on the floor. He had slashed up all of my clothes with the exception of maybe one outfit. and he had cut the cords to every single television in the house. And at that point, I knew I could no longer take it. I was told by his mother that he needed a stronger woman who could deal with that, because she had suffered abuse by his father's hand. I don't want anybody to ever have to go through that feeling of being trapped, of fearing for your life, of not knowing. I mean, there are so many more things that I could tell you about, to the point where if I knew he had been out drinking, I was sitting there waiting with a gun in my hand to protect myself. Like, there's no excuse. And we found out that he did have blackout periods during which he was functioning. It was called grand mal seizures. But there's still no excuse to have to live with that, to have to deal with that. He's now medicated and doing fine, but absolutely no excuse for that.
Okay, Shamika, darling,
Are
you there? Breathe,
yes.
breathe. And we thank you for sharing the story, because I can feel it was hard for you. So thank you. Thank you so much. So we're gonna pause for 30 seconds, but I'm gonna talk for those 30 seconds while she collects herself, because if you can tell people, if you were listening, it's very personal to her. So that's why we definitely, when we decided to do this show, we already automatically knew that jokes would be at a minimum, because it wasn't much to joke about. Don't get me wrong, Greg will be in the house, but at this particular moment, there's no need for that. Now my story, I got two stories. One story comes from growing up as a 5-year-old in Brooklyn, listening to my mother get beat to where I used to come to her bedroom door. I'll never forget, it was like a little sliding plastic door they had, and she would be like, go lay down or go do something, and I would be like, why? And he'd be telling her to shut up or whatever he'd be telling her, she wouldn't do it. The next thing I know, I just hear her crying and he hitting her. And this went on for a while. I don't remember as a kid, but I remember her going through it and the pain after he would do it, and I would go in the room, she'd just be sitting there. And I remember, just like watching TV, she would try to console me, let me know that everything was okay. But I knew at that moment I didn't like that. And I knew at that moment that's not something I could be a part of. So I watched it go on for a little while. And then whatever happened, he disappeared one day. Disappeared. She got tired of that shit, and he was gone. And I told her as I got older, I was like, Mommy, I hate him. I hate him with all my heart. She's like, Greg, don't hate him. Don't hate him. What happens one day, she comes in the house and goes, he got shot. Now, as maybe I think an 8, 10-year-old, first thing came out of my mouth was, I hope he died. And she's like, that's not nice. I said, the pain he gave you, it can't do nothing. When we went to the hospital to visit this man, I looked at him and I still hope he died. And that was, I guess, for my mother, that was the power of love she had, because she still went to the hospital to see this man after he used to whip her ass. And I think, he knew I hated him. Because I saw him years later when I was 16 years old, and I prayed, because my mother, don't ask me why, y'all. Don't ask me why. She happened to go out with him one night. I'll never forget the movie they went to see. The movie, Muhammad Ali movie. I forgot the name of it, but his first movie that they had about him that was in theaters. They went to see that. And I looked at him. This had to be 74, 75. And I was like, how in the hell can you go up this man after he did what he did? I didn't say nothing about it. I get older. I get much older. I had to be 18. And I'm sitting in a car one day, and I hadn't seen this man in years. And he pulls up in a cab looking like shit on a stick and just looking real terrible. And I think he saw me and recognized me, but I think, and also I saw in his eyes that he didn't want to look at me because it maybe he felt the embarrassment, or he knew the ass whipping he was about to get if he said the wrong thing to me. Because at that moment, I wouldn't have cared. But then, you know, the love my mother had and instilled in me what kind of young man you need to be, what I took from that was a blueprint of what not to do.